What is going on, Duke fans? Adam Plummer here with another episode of the Duke Basketball Corner podcast. It is tourney season. It is officially that time, and it is nice to have the Band-Aid back, Zion Williamson. Zion Williamson will be back, and all the issues will be gone, and everything is wonderful, and we'll live happily ever after. So, of course, it is a fairy tale, or so we hope. So, first thing I'll say is, look, I love doing this. I love the podcast. Been doing it for 6 years. I just want to talk ball, and doing these solo, I'm going to be doing them all the time no matter what. If this is my last go around doing it kind of consistently during the season, it is what it is, and I just want to go out with kind of just having fun. And I would just love to have somebody. I'm going to do interviews and stuff and have people on, but I would love to just have a co-host, because I've been hosting and for the whole time, pretty much just kind of propping people up and basically just making it easier for them. I would love to just have someone at least not take the full role, but just kind of join me in a conversation. And that would just be awesome, just to talk basketball, because that's something where I've really never gotten to do that unless I'm guesting on other people's pods, which I've done plenty, or radio. But I would love to just do that on my own, just have somebody on and back and forth and just kind of set each other up. Or, I mean, if you're willing, let me know. Just kind of act as the host, because I would love to just basically analyze without always thinking of really kind of setting up the other person, if you know what I mean. So if anyone's interested, let me know. CC_Duke Games. You can email me at comster81@gmail.com, COMSTER. And as I've been saying consistently, if you want the podcast to keep going in a consistent fashion next year, this is the 16th episode this season, subscribe, rate, review, do all that stuff on iTunes. I am going to try to record an episode where I do explain the whole situation with the pod. It just makes me insanely uncomfortable to talk myself up. I will force myself to do that for one episode. I'm not going to use any segment of a normal pod to do anything near like that. But subscribe, rate, review, and just when I put, if you know me through Twitter, when I put it on the timeline, hey, retweet it. I mean, I've never asked for a retweet for anything really. So I don't know. It's just to spread the word. That's all it is. Just to know that it'll be worth it next year. I'm not trying to, trust me, I'm not trying to get rich off this stuff. It's just, I want to know it's worth it, because I've been doing it for so long, and it's just tough to know what's out there. And again, if you want to have some fun, join me on the pod during the postseason this year, during the ACC Tournament, in between ACC and NCAA, during the NCAA, hit me up. Hit me up on Twitter, hit me up email, anything. I would love to have you. The one way I will talk myself up is to say those who hear me interview others, those who have been on, they say, I am, over the top kind of generous in terms of just boosting them up nonstop. And I'm not saying they don't deserve to be, but trust me, I'll make it easy for you. I'll make it fun. It's all good times. It's basketball. All right, so let's get on with it. Little joke at first was with Zion. Obviously, it's not all great, but with Duke, Pittsburgh won last night. They beat who they even play? They beat I don't even know, to be honest. The 80-70. They beat someone. Anyway, my boy Xavier Johnson, DMV. He had a big game. He's going to have plenty of big games in the upcoming years. Jeff Capel got himself a good one there from Bishop O'Connell. So Duke might play them, or another matchup with Cuse. They've seen plenty of Cuse this season. They've seen plenty of Cuse in the postseason. Their Sweet 16 opponent last year. So that would be... they are not the most fun team to play, I'll say that. And with Zion back, I'd like him to kind of get back into the flow of things without having to go against that annoying zone. Obviously, there's not many teams like Syracuse who play that zone, and that was one of the things that threw them off. Just like, you got to remember, these are freshmen. Everything they faced this season has pretty much been for the first time. So that first time versus Cuse definitely threw them off, and especially considering all the other context that was involved with Trey out, or Trey getting injured, Cam out, and just short rest coming off Florida State. It was just all kinds of stuff. So I would prefer Pittsburgh. I'm sure Coach K would not, because he has said many times he does not like to face his ex-assistants. I guess this should also be included as ex-player. So let's talk... Let's go over how has Duke struggled without Zion. They are 3-3, and let's just go over their stats. And I'm not just going to reel off some stats. I will kind of explain the context of them. So ACC only stats, KenPom.com, Ken Pomeroy, the pre-Zion injury compared to now. The stats just in the ACC. So, pre-Zion injury, going into North Carolina, the offensive efficiency was 112.7. Pretty good. Now it's 108.8. That's a big drop-off. Once you get enough of a sample size going on, they don't drop that quickly and that drastically. But it's obviously a lot goes into the offensive efficiency. Something like... what's causing the issues? Turnovers. Pre-Zion injury, 16.6%. Now 17.7%. And that's the thing, because as much as Duke was running all year, they weren't turning it over. And that was something where I constantly heaped praise on them, because they're such a young team, and we've seen young teams just kind of throw the ball away nonstop. Not just Duke, all kinds of young teams, because, hey, they're young. That's what they're going to do. They're going to learn from their errors, and Duke wasn't making those errors, especially with Trey. Trey was making great decisions in transition. The issue without Zion is there's not as much transition now. And Trey, he was doing a great job, and I remember that Trey pod where he came back. It was right before Georgia Tech when he came back. And I did a whole pod about how it's not just transition where he pushes. He turns what shouldn't be transition, or it's not just off turnovers where he pushes. He turns anything into transition. He can speed up any opponent just with his anticipation, with his accuracy on the outlet passage, just any normal missed shot by the opponent, a make by the opponent, just anything. He is looking for you, but you have to have the guys leaking out to do that. There haven't been the guys leaking out to do that because Duke's defense, they need everyone back. They need everyone back playing defense. They need everyone back helping to team rebound. They can't afford a RJ Barrett or Cam Reddish leaking out all the time. So that transition potential that Trey brought, it just isn't there without Zion. They can't leak out knowing Zion's back there as the Band-Aid. That's what he is for everything. He can cover up any issues. Not all, but he has the potential to cover up a multitude of worrisome areas for Duke. So now they have to try to run where sometimes they shouldn't, where sometimes it's not available. They have to run more half-court offense. And yeah, now they're turning it over more. It's just now they're starting to look a little more like freshmen. Not a ton. I wouldn't say the turnovers are out of hand, but it's just the margin for error is a lot slimmer. Offensive rebounds. Duke, they were ranked number 1. I believe they were tied with LSU on Synergy for being number 1 in the country for the percentage of their offense which came from offensive rebounds and putbacks. Now, it's not even close. In terms of the percentage, it was 34.6. Now it's 33.4. And it's just Zion, he would grab those and just... I compared his anticipation and just his sense of where the rebound was going to go, because everyone sees his athletic ability. They don't see his intelligence. They don't see his basketball mind. And yeah, it's impossible to see the basketball mind, but he just has a feel for the game that was just impossible to know watching him in high school. And I really didn't watch him much in high school. I watched a couple games, and he was just like kind of wandering all over the place. I'm like, he can't drift off guys like that in college. And he does get burned at times. He does get burned. I remember Louisville, like Jordan Nwora, he kind of drifted off a bunch, but usually he has a good sense of how far he can drift off and how much he can help others while still being able to get back to his man. Or he can just leap 20 feet through the air and block DeAndre Hunter, because that is not human. Let's see, free throw rate, another huge thing, because I have harped throughout the year that Duke needs as many chances as possible, as many quality chances as possible to score, and that's going to be through free throws, it's going to be through transition, and it's going to be offensive rebounds. They need as many of those 3 areas as possible. And Zion, he affects all 3 by not being there, negatively affects it. So the free throw rate has gone from 35.1% to 33.3%. It's pretty drastic drop off. Defensive efficiency. It's gone up by a full point. Up in defense, obviously not good. It was 96, now it's 96.9. The turnover percentage, here you go, 20.1% when he was there, now 18.1. Yikes. So, steal percentage, this is what, that's the thing with Trey. When Trey was out, everyone's like, oh, see, they don't get steals with that. The steals have gone to nothing. If it wasn't for Miami, which Duke was just... They're still talented enough, and Miami is decimated enough as a team. Miami doesn't have anyone. But if they had DeJuan Huell, I think it's DeJuan Hernandez now, totally different team. But my other DMV point guard, little Chris Likes, man, he's on his own. And Duke's defense, that was one game. I love Trey, love his defense, amazing. He got too much credit that game because Duke's entire defense was based on just shading over to wherever Chris Likes was, and it was just a nightmare for him. They just wore him down. It was just help waiting. Wherever he went, they would switch length on him at times, and it was oh my God, I feel bad for him. So, great player, bright future, but yeah, I think that was a little bit of a stat skewer game for Miami. Block percentage, that's down 15.4% to 15.0. I know it was number 1. I'm not sure what it is right now, but I know it's down. And the thing with Zion is he wouldn't just block shots. He would block shots and keep the ball in and start breaks. It's huge. That is absolutely huge. So here's what I feel is the biggest benefit to Zion coming back. Duke is now, again, if he can get his endurance going, and hey, that's a big if. Was he in 6 games with 3 weeks? So it's less important that Duke wins the ACC than just Zion gets his legs under him. That's huge. Because if he can, Duke is now a closing team again. Duke is a second half team. If you've watched Duke the last couple games, and I'm sure most of you have, Duke has been a team that basically they just have to hope they can just beat a team down immediately because they aren't going to have that closing ability, which they did with Zion. What closing ability am I talking about? Let's go over it. All right, so this year, I mean, you think about freshmen. Yeah, it's going to be tough to put together full games. Not because they don't have the ability. It's just it's tough to get that consistent level to come in right away and be on your game right away. It's just not natural. I mean, you're up, you're down. Basically, it's Cam Reddish. if you could just kind of spread out Cam Reddish for everything, it's like it's a whole kind of bipolar sort of aspect of it, and I don't mean bipolar in any way, in an offensive way, just in kind of the up and down terms. So let's look at poor starts, turned it on in the second half. Army, they played great. Coach K's all matter, and Army's not a good team. Duke was winning by 8 at halftime. That was the second game of the season, right after Kentucky. You'll see Duke kind of drops off after some of the big wins, and Kentucky. By the way, this whole transitive property stuff, I don't even like. It's so ridiculous at this point. Like just look at the overall picture. Like, if you really think it's important that Duke beat Kentucky by 7 million when Kentucky wasn't ready, I don't know what to tell you. So, I mean, it is what it is. I don't go by that transitive property much, especially when it happened a while ago, because it's just meaningless. So Army, they were up by 8, then second half, outscored them by 14, so it was a +6. Scoring margin, whatever, put differential, there we go, there's the term I was looking for. So they outscored them by 8 in the first half, 14 in the second, so they won by 22. Gonzaga, they're down 8 in the at halftime, outscored Gonzaga by 6 in the second half. So it was a +14, still lost, but I would say that was because Gonzaga really tried to give that one away. I don't even know. I didn't see the Gonzaga St. Mary's game last night. I don't know what happened, but yeah, that was an odd-looking score. I mean, when you don't play competitive teams for a while, that could be a wake-up call for Gonzaga. We'll see what the deal is with that. Yeah, so those two early games, that was random, but it was after, I would say it's once Hartford. That really got it started. Hartford up 9 at halftime, outscoring by 21. So that was +12. Yale outscoring by 9 in the first half, outscoring by 24 in the second. Turned that into a blowout. Princeton outscored by 13 in the first half, outscored by 38 in the second half. So, yeah. Texas Tech. Texas Tech outscored Duke by 1 at halftime, and Duke outscored them by 12 in the second half. Clemson, 7 in the first half, 12 in the second. Wake, 8, then 14. Georgia Tech outscored by 2, then at halftime, then 15. You can see this is a trend. 10, St. John's, 10 at halftime, outscoring by 20 in the second half. BC, that was crazy. They were down 2 at halftime, outscored BC by 27 in the second half, +29. I mean, Virginia, let's see. I'm not going to... Louisville, same thing, down 9, outscoring by 11 in the second half. Louisville kind of crapped themselves. And, yeah, so I will say Zion, he has a lot to do with that. He has a lot to do with that because Zion is a ball of energy. I mean, you can't help but be motivated, I would assume, just being around him. It's just a ball of positive energy. And I think that had a lot to do with it. Duke, all they needed was just one little bit of ability to grab momentum that was on. So since then, I would say you have the Q's second game, where they were down 5 at halftime and outscored Q's by 15 in the second half. So that was a plus 20 without Zion. That was some nice moves by K to really create action. Instead of just having RJ standing at the high post waiting for an entry, he actually ran Trey and O'Connell into the high post. He flashed him into the high post to create action, create energy there. That was a good job, and Duke actually did get a bunch of offensive rebounds in that game in the second half. So there, but outside of that, I mean, Wake Forest, when they were up 1 at halftime, even in the second half, so they won by 1. They like that. With Zion, it's just a feeling that, I mean, there's no guarantees, but they would have just blown it out. Also, Virginia Tech, same thing. Where like they were down 3 at halftime, couldn't get it any closer. So whenever they're down by just a little or it's close, with Zion, you just have that feeling, that closing feeling with Zion, where it's just he's gonna kill it in the second half, and he's gonna carry everyone along with him. That's just the feeling that you get. Some people have that it factor. And Duke is a great team without him. They are a special team with him. And you really got the feeling they were hanging on for these other games, Wake Forest especially. I mean, it's ugh. That was brutal. I mean, and I mean, you got, when they play a team like North Carolina, I mean, Duke was doing everything possible to kind of hang in there. But there's really only so much they can do for a certain period of time. I mean, here we go. There was, I mean, when you think about Duke's three-point defense, that's something that's gone really underrated, because we think three-pointers with Duke, we think, oh, Duke's just, they can't shoot three-pointers themselves. But they've kind of equaled that out with how good their defense is. And against teams, I mean, they did have some issues. The second game at UVA, with the Cavs, they started 2 of 7. They missed their last, but in between they were 8 of 16. But I mean, that was when Duke... That was when R.J. Barrett started out 5 of 5, and Cam had one of his 2 outlier games where he actually was able to put 2 halves together consistently. So yeah, and then the second UNC game. Let's see that. I mean, I didn't finish my opening to that. I mean, UVA, Virginia Tech, and North Carolina, they're all in the top 12 in terms of three-point percentage, at least the last time I checked. And Duke really held them down. I mean, Virginia, in the first game, absolutely. And then the second game, mostly. They just allowed that period of time. In Virginia Tech, absolutely. Virginia Tech beat Duke, and it was mostly, I mean, Duke's offense actually was pretty good. Their defense, it's the worst defensive game I saw Duke play by such a wide margin. It's not even close. Like, that game, it was so bad defensively. And that's when you really miss Zion. I mean, they just had no answer for Blackshear, and they basically were just selling out to stop the three, and it didn't even do anything. They were still getting open threes, still getting straight line drives to the rim, it was just awful. Awful, awful, awful. And I just can't imagine that happening with Zion. So UNC, these 3 straight halves, they really did a great job preventing open threes for Carolina. Shutting down the best shooting Carolina team I might have ever seen under Roy. I mean, the 2005 team was terrific. This team is unbelievable. And 3 straight halves where UNC just couldn't hit anything. And then at 52 all, 12-10 left, you got Cam made 3-point field goal. Kobe White made 3-point field goal. Cam missed jumper, offensive rebound. White made layup, free throw. And, all right, I'll just say, for 10 possessions, It was 9 scores, 23 points, 8 of 16 field goals. So they weren't even shooting that well, but 5 of 6 3-point field goals, and they got the offensive rebound and 7 of 8 missed shots. And a 14-2 run over 301 made it 75-60 with 6:47 left. That was pretty much all she wrote, despite North Carolina really doing their damnedest to try to allow Duke back in. It was the worst, the most brutal, ugly 10-0 run I've ever seen a team make when Duke slowly made their way back. But despite not really actually doing anything to earn their way back, it was just awful. They didn't deserve to win anyway, so that was what it was. To give up those offensive rebounds to Carolina nonstop, and then to give up the threes, and the offensive rebounds, the threes, it was like rinse, repeat. So they were just, their legs were gone. That's pretty much all it was, because when you look at Duke as a second half team, one thing that is huge is R.J. Barrett's ability to turn it up. He's done that all season, and that's something where, while he's really given everything he's had in the 2 Carolina games recently, in the Virginia Tech game, in the Virginia Tech game he was also sick. Recently it's been tougher for him to really muster that effort without Zion because he doesn't have that consistent number 2. We've been hoping to see it out of Cam. And Cam has shown glimpses. But the Virginia Tech game, I mean, and the last North Carolina game, we saw huge first halves. And then he just disappeared in the second. And that is kind of a overall picture of Cam Reddish in terms of just his scoring and his offensive efficiency shooting the ball. I'm not talking about he's done a great job and still contributing in other areas. Great attitude, really does a lot of positive things on the court, but he's just he hasn't put 2 halves together except for the Florida State game, except for the second Virginia game. And, I mean, if you just look at stats, I mean, the first UNC game, but a lot of it was in garbage time. So that's why I said Cam Reddish, at the beginning of the year, he's the X factor. He absolutely is the X factor. If he's on, Duke's not losing. Duke's not losing. Because there's just no way to stop him then. Duke's offense is just so horrific in half court. If he can even provide that tiny little bit of a threat, Duke ain't losing. So, I mean, it's just imagine if he can get hot and stay hot in the tournament, but that's a big if. He hasn't shown he can do it. I mean, this is a guy who, I think, after the first 2 games, for the next, 14 games, until Florida State, there was only, 2 games where he played double-digit minutes in 2 straight halves, in both halves in a game. That's kind of crazy when you think about it. And it's not because of blowouts or anything, because Zion and RJ weren't having that issue of playing, being able to play double-digit minutes in each half. It was just a matter of one thing or another somehow keeping them out. It was really odd. With either foul trouble or just losing K's trust for a little bit. I mean, once Florida State happened, although he missed the next game, since then, at least in terms of minutes, he's gotten them. And I don't know if K he's had really a choice, because I mean, with the Trey injury and with the Zion injury, they need someone in there to score. But I think he's really proven the ability to impact the game at a high level at times, but I think we already knew that. We're still looking for Cam to be that guy Duke can count on. Everyone knows how talented he is. Everyone does. I mean, I saw an article, I think yesterday or the day before, I think it was Slam, Don't Sleep on Cam Reddish. It was the weirdest article I've read in a while. It was basically fanning out on him or something. First of all, nobody's sleeping on Cam. Everyone loves it. Nobody's sleeping on whatever isn't, the number 1 and number 2 thing of whatever it is. Something like hip-hop, whoever's not in the top three, everyone, like, everything else is being slept on. Like, the teams, if you're not, like, ranked number one, you're sleeping on them. It's just kind of a cliche at this point. Nobody's sleeping on Cam Reddish. She's very likely a top 5 pick, so chill. But I mean, he's got to produce more. I've been in his corner, man. He's my guy the same way Trevon DeVal was last year in terms of they have the ability to impact the team. But the difference is this year, Cade trusts him. Cade runs so many plays for him. Cade didn't do that for DeVal. So that's the difference right there. Cam just needs to produce. I wanted DeVal to get the chance. I wanted the offense to give Duval a chance, and then finally when he got it, it was like too late in the season. But Cam, he's had plenty of offense designed for him. It isn't simply he's the third wheel behind RJ and Zion. He has opportunities. So, I mean, I'll say the same thing I always do. If Cam Reddish can be consistently productive for a couple games, Duke ain't losing. They're the national champions. It's that simple. As far as free throws, I have been on that the entire year. I'm actually going to take an episode off from going in-depth on free throws. As you can listen to any other episode I've done, last episode with Sean Kress, anything, where I've talked about the free throws. So, I mean, very quickly, 5 out of 7 games decided by 5 or less points have been directly affected by free throws. Gonzaga on the other team's side, the other 4, Florida State, Virginia, Wake Forest, and Syracuse. Zion missed a potential game winner. RJ missed a potential game winner against Florida State. Trey also missed a front end of an and one there. Gonzaga crapped themselves from the free throw line. And Wake Forest, RJ missed the last 5 and went 3 for 9. Virginia, they went 11 for 22 in the second half. Zion went 3 for 9. It was just, it's bad all the time, especially close games down the stretch. So I've harped on that plenty of times. Not going to go deep on it now. So Marquise Bolden gets injured a couple minutes into the game. That's 3 ACC games where Duke has lost a starter less than 6 minutes in, and 2 of them less than 3 minutes in. Both of those were against North Carolina. Somehow, it is just it's rough. It's rough, and it's not just people love to say that, hey, Duke has so much talent. It's chemistry, man. Like, it doesn't matter who you have. You need the chemistry. If your guys don't play together all the time, then they're not going to be used to playing with each other. And these guys already have great chemistry, so I think we're lucky in that sense. It's tough. I mean, I think 8 out of 18 games Duke had their starters in for the whole game. 8 out of 18 conference games. It's tough because I'm also including the Florida State and I think I included Georgia Tech too because Bolden left that. So yeah, I mean it's tough when you don't have your group. So Bolden MCL sprain. I don't even know why there's articles written about what is I don't understand how we don't know. Maybe by now, maybe this morning they've announced the degree of the sprain, because only then will we know if he's coming back. There was no way he was playing in the ACC tournament. But Bolden, he would be great to have, obviously. Tremendous season. He is really, he has come such a long way. And it's just tough because of all his injuries, the beginning of his career, and now he's finally healthy. And I think actually the game before, he left the Wake game with something. I don't even know what really. Something with his hip, I believe. So he missed a bunch of that game too. He did come back, but I don't know. Hopefully hopefully he's okay, and we'll see how that goes. So before we talk about what Duke is going to do with lineups and everything, it's interesting because how are we going to think about this team? 26-4 heading into the final regular season game against North Carolina. There was another team that was 26-4 heading into the final regular season game against North Carolina. That team was, I think, 7-3 against top 50 teams. This team was 9-4, so pretty much the same way. How do you think we remember that team? Because both teams now have lost to North Carolina. That team won a game in the ACC Tournament, lost the next, and then lost to Lehigh. People think of that team as a gigantic failure. And no matter what examples I bring up to prove that they were actually really good. They never fell out of the top 10 the entire year. Great team. It's just that it all went wrong at the end. I mean, Austin Rivers did everything he could. There's no one else who could create their own shot on that team, and the offense was designed for ISO. So it wasn't like the following year where it was actually back to like old school K3-2 motion. So right now you got to think: Are you going to think about this team the same way? Well, obviously not. I mean, people hate Austin Rivers for some reason. I don't get it. Some try to make up excuses like he hasn't come back to Duke. Then he did come back, and that didn't make a difference. I don't know what Austin Rivers did to all the Duke fans, but he's never said a negative word about anything. So I don't know. I think people think he did Seth Curry wrong in some way. Anyway. So yeah, it'll just be interesting to see how this goes. Because obviously this team is more talented. Obviously you could say this team lost their games because of injuries, so it's not the same thing. But it's interesting when you look at the KenPom era. Duke teams that have suffered more than one home loss. There was the 2007 team, a total rebuild. They lost 4, and then they lost to VCU in the first round. There was the 2012 team, which I just mentioned. They lost 3 home games, and they lost in the first round. There was a 2016 team who, despite making it to the Sweet, they lost 3 home games. I'm talking about during the regular season in conference play. Despite making it to the Sweet 16, I think we all, or at least I felt that they were very fortunate to do so. They were down at the half against UNC Wilmington and Kevin Keats. They managed to win that game in it was actually a pretty fun game, offensive. Then I thought they got lucky that Yale beat Baylor because Baylor they couldn't really. Ugh. But yeah, so against Yale, Duke was up 46-19 with just under 4 minutes left in the first half, and somehow with that became 54-47 with 11:39 left, which just shows kind of a lot about the issues going on with that team. So yeah, and they ended up losing to Oregon in the next round. That's when the Grayson stuff kind of gained steam. The Coach K, he got a little too full of himself with lecturing Dylan Brooks in that game, and to K's credit, he apologized for it. And for some reason, nobody apologized to me for all the hurtful things they said to me on Twitter for just saying K shouldn't have said that. But sometimes K's cold gets a little crazy. So yeah. So teams that have, in the 18 years of KenPom, teams that have lost 2 conference home games, or more than one, hasn't worked out. Except for there's one team. That is 2015. They lost 2 home games. They lost to, I believe, Miami, and they lost to Notre Dame. I think that worked out pretty well. wouldn't you say? So 4 teams out of the KenPom, 18 years. You got 2 first-round losses. You got a Sweet 16 appearance, though that was kind of lucked into. Not lucked, but fortunate. And you got a national champion. So you never know. You never know. Well, I think I got a question of, there's stats that there has to be like 3 upperclassmen who get significant minutes for every champion since like 2000 or something. Why is Duke going to be the outlier? Duke's going to be the outlier for a number of reasons if they're going to win this year. I mean, how many teams have had 2 freshmen average 20? So I'm pretty sure. I mean, I think Duke's the first. So there's an outlier. How many players are like Zion Williamson? Think about that. Not many. How about none? I mean, just the type of player he is. I'm not saying he's better than everyone in history. I'm just saying the type of player he is different. And I think the impact he has this year, there's not a lot of great teams. Since I said that, now I'm sure it'll be 4 Final Four teams that nobody expected. But it's pretty much like 6 teams. Was it North Carolina, Kentucky, Duke, Virginia, Gonzaga, and Tennessee? I'm not sure if it goes much beyond that. Maybe Michigan State, but it's not real deep. I mean, that's why I always make fun of how everyone says the bubble, it's the worst bubble ever. This year, I mean, it's bad. And there's a lot of mid-major teams that deserve to be in over some of these crappy bubble teams. So hopefully that happens. But yeah, so we'll see how that goes. But Duke is going to be an outlier in many ways. I mean, yeah, they haven't gotten that consistency. They haven't gotten the chemistry you would hope for in conference play. But when they've had that full team, I think we all know the record is 19-1 Gonzaga, and teams certainly look like they crap themselves when they play Duke. And Duke always seems to have a chance, no matter what. As bad, like the worst they can play, they will always seem to have a chance. I mean, Gonzaga really tried to give it to them. I mean, the stats with Gonzaga were just downright horrific. 3 of 15 in the final 10 minutes inside of 6:38. Gonzaga attempted the final 7 free throws in 9 of the last 10. And they it was a total choke job. Total choke job. I mean, let's see, Louisville, obviously. Louisville's been doing that for a couple of years, choking everyone. I mean, Louisville with a double-digit second-half lead is almost worse than them being down 10. I mean, I don't know what they're in their own heads. Hopefully they kind of get over that mental block next year because they got a lot of talent. Jordan Noir, great player. But yeah, North Carolina, they somehow tried to give it away. But Duke, there is still that intimidation factor. And it's even there a bit without Zion, so when he's there, it's crazy, man. Like, there definitely is a mental advantage Duke has. Alright, so the ACC postseason awards. I didn't think there was too many surprises there. Were Player of the Year, Zion, and RJ was runner-up. That is what I predicted. I think I had DeAndre Hunter tied with RJ as my runner-up. Let's see, I had Coach of the Year, Buzz, runner-up Bennett. It was the reverse in the decision. I totally understand that. I think Tony Bennett did a great job this year in terms of just adapting to his team. Everyone says he just runs the same old boring offense, and he is now really expanding it. And I think that's less to do with, many will say it's because of the UMBC game, which still many people love to forget that DeAndre Hunter did not play last year. But it's because he's really adapting to the talent on his team. The UVA hasn't had this type of talent, and now it's more continuity ball screen. As I've talked to Jordan Sperber about a lot, it's a kind of a combination of the continuity with the blocker mover. They still have the pack line, but they even extend that more, a little more pressure. It's just the ball screens because they're more talented. They can create their own shots better. Diakite, he's improving drastically, and just in terms of shot blocking right there, like Twitter or social media would love it if UMBC is matched up with UMBC, they're playing Vermont again for the championship. If they win, it would be amazing if they were matched up against UVA, but it wouldn't be pretty. UVA would smash them. All right, so Defensive Player of the Year. This one was the shadiest award ever because Zion, I saw right away, Zion got 0 votes. My choice was Zion tied with Hunter with Trey as the runner-up. Zion got 0 votes. I'm like, how is that possible? I don't know who makes the name available, if it's the school or the conference. I think it's the school. Don't quote me on that. But if I had to guess, and this is just a guess, I would say Duke took Zion's name out to try to get Trey, to boost Trey, to get him voted as the Defensive Player of the Year, because he wasn't an option. That's unbelievable to me. He wasn't an option. And it's not just you can only have one per team. So, it didn't quite work out. DeAndre Hunter still won. Trey was the runner-up, but kind of shady. Most improved, Jordan Noir, deserved. Six-man, Cabangeli, deserved. Freshman of the Year, Zion, absolutely deserved. First team, Zion, RJ. Let's see. They had Kyle Guy, they had Cam Johnson, RJ Barrett, Zion Williamson, and DeAndre Hunter. I don't know. I think Kyle Guy kind of was expected to be there, and some people just don't like admitting they're wrong. Kyle Guy had a great year. I don't know about first team. But and then second team, they had Luke May, Kai Bowman, Ty Jerome, Kobe White, Kerry Blackshear. Third team, Jordan Noir, Marquise Reed, Tyus Battle, Nikhil Alexander Walker, and John Mooney. I don't know, I feel like Marquise Reed, I actually had him on my first team. And I did admit that I could see why he could be switched for Ty Jerome, because I think Ty Jerome was amazing. I don't know how Kyle Guy was ahead of Ty Jerome. I don't know how Luke May was ahead of Marquise Reed. I think Luke May might be another one like Kyle Guy where people didn't want to admit they were wrong. I mean, shoot, I picked Luke May I think I picked him as my preseason player of the year because I hadn't seen any of the freshmen. So I said that at the time that I was just basically throwing darts with these freshmen. I had no idea, so I'm not going to pick them. And Luke May seemed obvious, but you can't predict or project. Or most games, well, I couldn't because I hadn't seen Kobe White. I mean, Carolina's whole offense is designed around him. I mean, and he just keeps getting better, especially in conference play. And Cam Johnson, just a fantastic senior season. I mean, he can stroke it. I mean, I don't know. Marquise Reed, I think, got the short end of the stick right there. Besides that, I think that's about it for postseason awards. All right, so with the lineup, what are they going to do? What are they going to do in terms of? Are they going to start Zion at center? Is Javin going to play more? Is Jack White going to play along with him? I think it just depends on the opponent, because I think right now it'll probably be mostly Javin with Zion because you want to get that defense. Because I mean Zion, he hasn't lost his ability. I mean the endurance will have to be worked on, but I mean he's going to take such a load off of RJ. and that'll be huge. I mean, Duke has not had a second scorer. You could see RJ's legs going, and RJ, he has that endurance, but there's only so much he can do. I mean, the Cuse game was an extreme, but you saw those legs go. You could see it coming against North Carolina, and if his legs are gonna go, that like they were done. They were absolutely done. And yeah, you would just hope they would have that number 2. And now Zion, he's gonna provide that. And everything a defense does will have to account for him. Even if plays aren't being run for him, like he's going to be there for the offensive rebounds. He affects everything. So I think it's more important right now that you have Javin. Because Javin you can also run with. Javin, he's been so good lately with his foul rate. I mean, you couldn't put him on the floor earlier in the season. He would just foul immediately. It'd be impossible to trust. Jack White, I still think he can get a lot of time. It's tougher to trust that he'll space the floor as well if he's not hitting shots. I love everything Jack White does, but in order for him to get consistent playing time, he needs to hit shots. But then I could say the reverse for O'Connell. O'Connell hits shots, but his defense is just god-awful. And then it was weird because I actually mentioned on Twitter during the North Carolina game, his first North Carolina game ever, he came in, he hit like 2 of 3 immediately. That was last year, the first North Carolina game. Since then, he doesn't look right against North Carolina. He looks very different against them than any other team. His shots aren't even close. He doesn't look confident. I'm not sure what the deal is. And, I mean, obviously, North Carolina is a pressure-packed game. So, yeah, you can understand it on that level, but at the same time, he's played in them now. He knows what the deal is, and, man, they could have used him. He got some open shots that he just bricked. I mean, they weren't even close, especially when Duke really needed it. They were doing a great job of hanging tough, the 52 all. I think that when Trey hit a 3, which, hey, that was shocking, to keep Duke down, I think it was like 61-58. I mean, Duke was hanging in there. They just needed somebody to step up. I mean, Cam had the first half, and then what did he go, like 1 for 12 in the second? It was all on RJ, and that's just, he can't keep carrying the team. So, O'Connell really would have helped. He really would have helped to hit some shots. And he has to, because his defense is that bad. I was looking through some on-off numbers in terms of the lineups. And, man, even when he's playing with Zion, like the team defense at those times, it's interesting. And I'm so happy I found on-offs. I'm going to post some stats probably on Twitter in terms of on-offs, because that is really rare for college basketball. Like, they have all those stats for NBA, but college basketball doesn't do that as much. I wish I could find more 3- and 4-man lineups, but in terms of 5-man, you can kind of switch guys out and see the numbers in that way and who they play with and who's good there. I got a question. How is Zion doing this year without Bolden? And, I mean, Zion's doing great with whoever he plays with. In terms of the numbers, I mean, he's great with Javin, because I think Javin is almost like the backup quarterback where everyone sees him like for a play and they throw a touchdown and everyone believes they can be the answer, even though they're just kind of, I will say, they're just there to provide a spark. And I shouldn't have even said just. Just is not the right word. He provides a great spark, and he's been fantastic, and he's going to be needed, especially if Bolden's out for the season. I mean, again, that margin for error is not much. So he's going to need to stay out of foul trouble. He's going to need to keep playing smart, keep making great, fantastic plays at the rim. And, Duke is going to be able to run more, because you look at the numbers with Jack White. The offense is a little better. The defense is a lot worse. So I would say, Javin can be better that way. And unless you get a team that just packs it in, you really need to rely on Jack White or Alex O'Connell being able to somehow hit a shot. Because, let's be honest, nobody's guarding Trey. Nobody's guarding him. I mean, that's why I want Kay to create more action for him, to get him involved, to make him a threat. Because he's not going to be a threat as a spot-up shooter. When he can hit that random corner three like he did against Carolina, hey, love that. But I wouldn't expect it. Hope for it, be happy when it happens, don't expect it. There's a lot in Trey's game that we just are not seeing, and that's really unfortunate, but I say that every year, and I'm not going to do my point guard and K system rant. So, I would say expect to see more Javin, but they're going to mix it up, I'm sure. I mean, who knows, maybe even throwing O'Connell in there with Javin, maybe with White. Well, no, yeah, I don't think they could do that with White, because I think the defense would just be, no, you can't do that. But, yeah, I mean, Zion might officially be listed as the center, but he's going to be roaming. That's what he does. He just he's everywhere as a threat with a help defense. So, yeah, I mean, that's what he does there. So I wouldn't get too caught up in official positions of who starts or whatever. I mean, again, I think it will be Javin, but the key is just being able to adapt to each situation. Like with Javin, I'm not sure how that'll work against Syracuse if they play like that, because, I mean, you're going to need Zion down low, and we saw when everyone's legs were just done. The first Syracuse game, Syracuse just kind of sunk down low on Zion and just dared Duke to beat him. And Duke, they didn't have the energy. They were done. It wasn't. That game was used as kind of a referendum on Duke. They can't shoot. They're not a good shooting team. I think it was just a bunch of outliers making it an extreme situation. I mean, they didn't have their best, their most lethal outside shooter in Cam Reddish against a zone. That sucks. They didn't have a Trey. That sucks. And they were coming off short rest. That sucks. They were coming from FSU. Big emotional win. So they're flying in for a Saturday to Monday turnaround. That sucks. It was overtime. That sucks. I mean, it was just a lot of stuff which allows it to be an outlier. And I'll say that reverse as well. I say plenty of times there's stat skewing games which I would ignore that are good. So it's not an excuse as much as just context. There's important context, or not important, just it's worth it. It's worth keeping in mind. I got a question. Why does Duke shoot worse at home than away? I guess because at home there's no funerals at Cameron. They're not wearing black, and RJ Barrett wears black for funerals. They shoot horrible everywhere. So it's just a matter of basically those outlier games. I mean, that really makes the difference. I mean, Syracuse, that really put them behind the 8 ball in terms of stats right there at home. And then, I mean, the three big ones were Notre Dame, and I mean the Virginia, the second game, and FSU. I mean, they don't shoot like that. It was just 3 random games, and I don't really think there's much to say besides that. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting because the overall stats that I saw, it's really odd that home and away stats I couldn't find anywhere really, except for Bartovic.com. He does a great job, and just in terms of the effective field goal percentage, just including the threes to make them more valuable. Overall, it's really equal, but then when you get into conference, that's when it really, you can see the difference. And yeah, so when you look at, let's see here, the away games. You have Wake Forest, where Duke just ran him in the second half. That's a crazy number. 63.7 effective field goal percentage. And I'll say that you can kind of cancel out with Miami at home. Then you have Notre Dame, and you have Virginia. Notre Dame 62.7 effective field goal percentage, Virginia 72.2. So, yeah, I mean, then besides that, it's normal. I mean, Virginia Tech's pretty high. That was the all offense, no defense game. North Carolina's horrific. Louisville's horrific. Pittsburgh was pretty bad. Pittsburgh was that letdown game. And, I mean, Florida State wasn't even that great. It was just outside. But, yeah, it's a couple games. That's all it takes to skew stats. And, let's see, at home, yeah, they just didn't have that great shooting game. And could you say that it is... I mean, I think it mostly is Cam. He had the Virginia game and Florida State game. And, yeah, those are his two games. That's really his two games, which, yeah. I mean, I wish he had more than that. But, yeah, here it is. All right, okay. Home Clemson. Yeah, they really didn't have. I mean, it was mostly just right around like 50%. They're just not a good shooting team. That's really all there is to it. I mean, when you rely so, especially recently, because when you rely so much, as I was saying before, on offensive rebounds and transition, I mean, half court, it's not pretty. Among 353 teams, they are ranked 346 in catch and shoot jumpers. Yet they shoot a lot of them, so it's kind of frustrating. But, yeah, there's just not, they don't have the spacing, and it's really interesting because Kay says he doesn't want to run many actual sets because it clogs everything up and the offense gets bogged down, so he wants to let them have freedom in motion offense, but that doesn't really look good. I mean, I can see when you have three guys that can create their own shot at any time, yeah, just let them go. But it made a big difference when there was only two. Makes a huge difference. So I would have liked to see more plays run, especially, again, O'Connell. When he's in there, run plays for him. Run action for Trey. But I don't know. I can understand Kay doesn't want to reinvent the whole system. I don't think it'd be reinventing the wheel or anything. I think these kids are really smart. They can handle it, but I don't know. I think he could have been a little more creative during the time when Zion was out with the offense, but hey, that's neither here nor there because Zion is back at this point. Let's see, another thing. Will Duke be able to... Will they get tired? If 3 straight games, if they... Let's say they make the final. If they are able to beat North Carolina, they make the final against Virginia. Are they going to be tired because they looked tired at the beginning against Gonzaga? I mean, I don't think. I mean, they just maybe there was a little bit of nerves against Gonzaga because I mean Gonzaga is they were a legit team. Duke, while they had played Auburn, they hadn't really been involved because Auburn for some reason never really felt like it was in doubt. I mean, it got to within 6 points a couple times. I'm not really sure why. I mean, Bolden had a great game that game. But it really never felt in doubt. I'm not quite... Yeah, I guess never got closer than 6. Gonzaga, they got worked. Gonzaga was by far the better team until Gonzaga crapped themselves with like 10 minutes left. There's no other analysis that needs to be said there. Gonzaga... The screening action they used against Duke is like picture perfect. I mean, Gonzaga was unbelievable that game in every possible way. They were so much the better team. And then, I mean, I don't know what happened then, but they almost gave it away. No matter what happened yesterday between them and St. Mary's, I mean, it doesn't make the Duke-Gonzaga game disappear. That was just really beautiful basketball they played. But I don't even remember what I was saying. So I will say, oh yeah, will they get tired? So they weren't tired. I don't think I mean, especially you could see at the end when they made that run, and it was interesting because that was when Cam, he was ultra Cam that game because he came in the second half and I think he hit like 2 straight threes and turned the ball over like 3 times in the span of 5 possessions. And Cage couldn't trust me, especially with Gonzaga. You see the legs going. So he actually used, I think, Javin and Jack White at the same time and just basically protected the rim. And Cam didn't see the court from like, I think it was like 9:30 or 10:30 to 30 seconds left. It was interesting, and that's when Duke made their comeback. So I was a little worried about him mentally there, but hey, he stayed strong. And yeah, he's been through some stuff, and hopefully he will come out on top. Besides that, I think the guy Joey Baker question, I'd already answered that on Twitter, but yeah, I'll answer it again. Joey Baker, if you watched the Miami game, and you know who Dejan Vasiljevic is, Dejan Vasiljevic like doesn't really dribble. He's kind of like, I mean, I don't know. He's like Klay Thompson, but he's not Klay Thompson. He's just kind of, he catches and he shoots. And as soon as he saw Joey Baker was on him, he all of a sudden like thought he was Kobe Bryant and like attacked the rim and scored. And he was just like, he was very aggressive, and it's basically like smelling blood in the water or whatever that saying is. And that's how everyone's going to be with Joey Baker when they see him. So maybe he can gain trust in some garbage time if that happens. Maybe in the first round, even though, I mean, Syracuse, I would very much doubt there'll be too much garbage time if they are the opponent. Maybe in the first round or second round of the NCAA tournament. But I think it's just really tough to trust Joey Baker. I know Miami, the defense was shaded over to so yeah, it did allow some openings on the weak side to take advantage of Joey Baker, but still at the same time, yikes. I mean, he struggles with defense, and so if he can come in and just be immediately hot, then yeah, absolutely ride the wave. But I would say the only really opportunity for legit playing time, unless he just gets randomly hot, is against a team that really struggles to score and is packing it in against Duke and just daring them. So he wouldn't be as much a liability on defense and can provide that spacing, even though he hasn't really hit. I don't think he's hit a shot yet. So he has to prove he can hit a shot first. So that's I'm player first, 99.9% of the time, and I'm not even sure why I have total trust in Coach K with this situation. I just feel like, I mean, they had to have talked it over, and I know, like football, a lot of times they will take the red shirt just if they need anyone to play. They won't care about feelings or anything. It seems like, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I asked Sean Crest on the last pod. He didn't know either, but they did talk. That is official. They did talk before and discussed it, so it wasn't out of the blue. If you think Coach K made a mistake, I mean, maybe Joey Baker thinks he will not be there for a year, so a year isn't that big. Maybe he just wanted to do whatever the team needs. I mean, either way, I don't know. I really wouldn't overthink that at this point. But hey, to each their own. So if Zion can come back, I mean, it's great just to have him back. I'm sure RJ loves having him back. And yeah, kind of the gang's back together, of course, just as Bolden gets hurt. It's really unfortunate because you'd love everyone there. You'd love Bolden there. I think a lot of people kind of think of him still the way they did before the season, no matter what he does. It's almost like it's not the same usage rate, but it's the same way where if you look at certain stats with Bolden in terms of like team, how the other team's doing against him, like how many points they score for and against when he's on the court, that type of stuff. it's going to be like that annoying Okafor theory. If you don't know what I'm talking about, that is the worst thing ever. And it still blows my mind that basically every single person who blogs for Duke, who have most fans, they still think that that is a legit thing, the Okafor theory. And I'm not confused about what it was. It wasn't that, even though the original title was how like Okafor is hurting Duke basketball or something. It was an argument just to kind of lower his usage rate. It wasn't saying Duke was better, or that's the argument the author gave. It's really odd that they never put their name on it. But, I mean, it made me feel so crazy that I was like kind of on my own island, which I seem to be on for everything, Duke. But to think that was crazy. So, I remember I talked to a bunch of analytics guys. They're like, no, you're right. That's really stupid. Like, it doesn't really say anything about what's going on around it. It doesn't, like, there's context with everything. I think I even had, like, Sam Vecini on a pod around that time, and I asked him, and he was like, no, it's ridiculous. But I think that you don't have to be an analytics nerd to understand why something like that is so dumb. You can't just go based on points for team, points against team. I remember, like, the Chronicle, they did that with, like, Marvin Bagley last year about why Duke is better without Marvin Bagley. And it blows my mind because it's such an overly simplistic way. You don't have to go super deep into stats. I'm not a stat nerd. I know how they can help. I know how the stats can help kind of find out why certain things are happening, see if what you thought was wrong. But if you use them only for confirmation bias, then you're going to end up using a stat like points for and points against. It's the same thing, like individual plus minus for a player in a game. Oh my God. Like, that's still, like, that, people were using that last year for Alex O'Connell, and just, oh my God. Like, think outside of the tiny little box for just a second. So I'm not saying everyone does that. I'm just saying beware the narratives. The same way Joey Baker, I think if he somehow does get minutes, and I hope he does, it wouldn't be a Grayson situation. It would not be a Grayson situation. The Grayson Allen situation was not a surprise. I predicted it, actually. I thought his breakout was going to come against Gonzaga the 2 games before, when I thought it was going to be more of a up and down game. It wasn't. But yeah, I've been saying that Grayson was due for a while. Like, I wrote articles about it. That was when I was blogging at the time. I got plenty of evidence to back that up. That was not a surprise, at least to me. I can't speak for others, but there is plenty of evidence watching Grayson. Like, he didn't just come out of nowhere. People think he just appeared out of a hole or something. He was like the number 23 recruit. He got minutes, not consistent. He obviously wasn't getting consistent minutes, but when he got minutes, he was productive, and he got over 20 a couple times. Like, anybody who gets over 20 more than like once or twice in a season, obviously the coach sees something. No matter if it's garbage time or not, you don't get over 20 minutes without showing something, showing you're deserving of it. I think he actually, like 2 games before the ACC tournament, he played like 20 minutes. It was like Wake or something. So yeah, beware of the soft narratives. Like, Grayson Allen was not a surprise, and if Joey Baker plays well, that is a much, much bigger shock than Grayson. Not because he can't play well, just because I haven't seen anything to make me to just allow me to project that. It's not a believing in him or not believing in him. I think that's something we get too caught up in. That if you critique a player, it's because you don't like them, and that's it. No, you can, as long as you do it intelligently, it's not an insult. It's when but if you're like personally insulting the player, like Jack White, I mean, that's something I obviously talked about with Sean Crest last pod, it was just people were over the top, and that's why on Twitter I put a little thread of just kind of going back to like Texas Tech and how huge he was that game, especially when the freshmen, the 4 freshmen, they were just kind of really learning the ropes at that time. And Jack was so big, just not just in terms of his production, which was insane. I mean, Duke was like 0-14 and he had 2 straight threes. He was ISO'd on like Texas Tech players for like 10 possessions in the last 15 minutes. Like Jarrett Culver, one of the top prospects of the draft. Jack White was defending him one-on-one and doing a great job blocking him, stripping him. And he was also directing the Duke guys where to go. I mean, that's leadership. And yeah, you can't give a guy playing time if they're not hitting shots. But he's doing so much else. It's worth hoping that he can just knock one down. And if he doesn't, it's not worth ripping him. Like, I don't understand that. I don't understand that at all. So, yeah. All right, so I'm going to be amping up. This is going to be like, there won't be pods lasting this long. Because this was kind of little, UNC recap. There's all kinds of weird stuff going on. But, yeah, I will pretty much, I don't know if I'll do I'll record an episode after the quarterfinal tomorrow, if that's against whoever that's against, Pittsburgh or Syracuse. But besides that, I will be pretty much recording an episode after. Yeah, I'll record after semifinals. If they win that, then after the final, I will obviously do the NCAA Tournament preview. Again, if you're interested, hit me up, because I just like talking ball, and it would be nice to have someone to talk to, because Twitter, it is a madhouse, and people just really just want to make their point that you're wrong about everything. It's not a conversation, which I would love to have. So it'll be fun. Hit me up for that if you are interested. Either way, subscribe, rate, review, do what you do. If you would like the pod to continue next year, I am not saying you have to. I'm not even saying I am deserving of it, but I've been doing this for 6 years, if nothing else. I know it is extremely different than what others do, just in terms of the combining of all kinds of analysis, and as well as the fan view of it without the bias. I can still look at it as a fan, which some people seem to have an issue doing, and I'm not saying that's better or worse. I'm saying it provides a different sort of lens. So for now, I will say that let's just hope Zion can get as many minutes as possible to kind of work out the rust, and hopefully everything will work out along with it on, what is today? Today, Wednesday? So everything will work out Thursday, and I will be recording a pod Friday after maybe a UNC win. And UNC, it would be nice to actually have, I think DeVal got injured early on in the semifinal last year against UNC. So that would be, that's 3 straight UNC games where a player has gotten injured early. DeVal came back, so I guess that's hurt, not injured. But it would be nice if that just wouldn't happen. So there's my little plea to the basketball gods. Until next time, I am Adam Comero. This has been the Duke Basketball Corner podcast, and I will be talking to everyone very soon.